Why do we like lamps? Is it a lamp if I never turn it on? Can lamps have drawers? What about doors? Who makes the rules? Can I make some rules? Is it a plan if you change the plan? What's a good shape? How do we make it? What if it falls over? Can I make the same shape twice? Is sawdust a sign of mastery or failure? If I never have the wood dream, will I fail in my quest? What makes art? Can I make art? Can art be little? Does making something too big make it art? Is it enough to make you feel? Is a bad feeling still an art feeling? Is a good feeling too cheap for art? Man, oh man. I'm on draft 2 of this wood bricks style where the record cabinet was my first attempt. Link to that here. I switched to maple, fixed the shape, and you just saw the results. I'm still working towards a portfolio for Art in the Pearl, and this is how it happened. I got a hot tip from one of my subscribers, thanks Jasper, about a yard sale with abundant wood shit, so I went and scooped up 3 red maple slabs for $40 each. I think that's the same as big leaf maple, which I liked working with. It had all been tagged from June 2021, so 4 years of drying time. Probably fine. They were also selling a flattening jig for an eye-watering 6 hungry bugs, which I figured I could beat with some homegrown ingenuity. For reference, a flattening jig is basically a gantry for a router, and you raster over the surface of really rough boards until you have a big flat surface. The quality of the flattening jig is limited by the flatness of the underlying table, the similarity of the rails that support the gantry, and the evenness of the gantry. For my purposes, all 3 were suspect, but since my plan was to rip this maple into itty-bitty bits and not turn it into a single big table, I didn't mind that my first attempt at making a jig wasn't dead nuts perfect. I linked up a few of my melamine tabletops to make the underlayment and flattened their junction by putting a big piece of MDF on top of that. I'm glad I pulled down that piece of MDF because it made for a really great drafting surface to draw the floor lamp design, work out the math, that kind of thing. Strong recommend on using MDF instead of paper as a drafting tablet. I jointed 2 cheapo studs I had to serve as gantry supports, and they weren't perfect, but I'd call them flat enough for my purposes. I also jointed a chunk of cedar 2x8 to be the backbone of the gantry, and my Bosch router track clamped on top of that gave me a nice, flat, low-friction surface to put the router on. The only things I had to buy were a 2-inch flattening bit for the router and a collet extension to make sure the bit could reach all the way down to the slab, plus half an inch or so of material removal. They had 2 choices for flattening bit, and I got the regular kind because it cost 1/3 as much as the one with the replaceable carbide bits. I'm not really a big slab guy, so I didn't feel like this is the time to make that kind of investment. Flattening the slab took the better part of a day, but I'm happy to say that I never felt unsafe when slinging the router around. Maple is hard shit, and the bit was 2 inches around, so I dropped the speed, as per recommendations from the internet, and it didn't burn too much. Lessons from jointing, and a note from future Steven. The larger the workpiece, and the more uneven it is, the more material you lose when flattening. If all I'm using this slab for is to make dimensional lumber, then rip it into jointer width planks first, and skip using the jig entirely. You'll preserve more thickness that way. When it comes to ripping those jointer width planks, choices are like bandsaw, jigsaw, but I think the real tool to use here would probably be something more like a sawzall. I need to get one of those. Anyway, let's get to the new stuff. I screwed up last time I made this shape. When I did the, what would I call it? The canopic jar shaped record cabinet Pharaoh class. The pine one. I thought I wanted 2 perfect shells, and that was a struggle. The lesson is not to avoid challenges. The ascent up that local maximum was steep, but the juice did not merit the squeeze. The true peak lies in rigid unity, undivided canisters, drawers, not doors. Masterstroke the first, as I built each ring, I gradually widened each brick instead of increasing their number and fiddling with the angle. This gave a hard-coated incline from toe to tippy top, and it was a lot easier to do things with the miter saw. Also, next time, don't use the bandsaw to clean up each layer. Just flatten each ring on the bench sander for a clean mating surface, glue, and build. Once everything is stacked, use the angle grinder to rough out the canister. The bandsaw helps, but I couldn't get it just right. I had these ugly overhangs here and there because my rings were off circular. I had to grind them flat, so just skip the bandsaw. Second master stroke. I knew which rings were going to have my drawers, so for those 2 rings, 3 out of my 12 bricks were not glued in. Instead, I used double sticky tape to hold them in place, and that worked fine. I pulled them out entirely during vertical glue up, and clamping pressure from above and below closed the space they were in a bit, requiring more sanding to get them to fit in. That could have been avoided if I left them in and blocked the glue with wax paper. Hindsight's 20/20. But the double sticky tape was a good move, and if you're following along at home, definitely put some on your shopping list because I have found a use for this stuff in literally every project since I bought it. I went to Winx Hardware for drawer slides because they had 10 inchers. They were literally $5 each. For how small these drawers are, this price bracket is just fine. I'm a sucker for oiled maple, so I oiled the maple. This helped show me the quality of my sanding, which was mediocre. I gave it 3 coats of shellac after that, sanding finer between each coat, then a final layer of wax on top of that I hand buffed. I only went to 220 grit, and I think I should have gone higher before the oil went on. Plus water popping, cheesecloth, and the other finishing tricks I'm also in too much of a rush to do. I just love oiling maple. The really new part is the electronics. I ordered the largest rechargeable lead acid battery that would fit in the base, which was 12 amp hours. It weighed as many pounds, much cheaper than lithium, and I actually want a heavy battery to give some ballast and prevent this beauty from tipping over. I mounted a battery charger up in there too, and it's wired in a parallel circuit, so all I need to do is plug it in when the battery is low, and we're charging. The circuit I put together is simple enough. Everything is on this 12 volt standard because that's the denomination that good-sized lead acid batteries can be found in. 5 volts would have been convenient for the abundance of chargers out in the world, since that's the standard for a lot of smaller DC devices, but Mauser didn't have chunky batteries at that potential. The first parallel circuit of interest is the LED circuit. I didn't know how many I would need, but I picked up the Luxion 7070 from Lumileds at 2700K. That's the warm color temperature that I like. At 12 volts and 700 milliamps, they put out about 1,000 lumens, which means little to me, but sounded bright. I wanted a challenge, so the whole surface, the LEDs I got are surface mount, which sucks. There's a resistor in there to get the right current. I didn't want this light obviously to be on all the time, so there's a relay to control where current will flow through this circuit. The circuit is only closed on when the drawer is all the way open. The second circuit is in charge of that. The second circuit is my signaling circuit. It has a reed switch which is normally open but closes, that is, lets current flow, when that switch is near an external magnet. This only happens when the drawer is completely open. When the reed switch closes, current flows through the relay, which energizes the LED circuit. I have a flyback diode bridging the relay because the inductor on this side of the relay basically charges up when the reed switch closes and goes nuts when the switch opens again because it resists changes in voltage. To keep those nuts off my circuit, the diode bleeds off the stored energy slowly. The third parallel circuit is the charging circuit. Gently pull out the drawer. Yeah, was that worth it?
Wow, yeah.
Well, it works. I never want to futz with electricity again because that's a whole suite of tools that I don't want to invest in. As much as I fret over making drawers, soldering stuff is even more annoying, and I can't hide my boo-boos with sanding and wood filler. Anyway, I'm calling this project a success, and I am putting it up for sale. It has a nice ballast, charging system in the top drawer, and warm bright LEDs in the bottom drawer. Well, thank you for tuning in. Like the video, please. And click the Etsy link if you want to own a piece of woodworking history. Subscribe to the channel if you want to see the final installment in this series, which, by the way, I've already started. And you can follow for daily updates on my Instagram. I'm basically everywhere these days. I hope you all enjoyed, and I'll be in the garage.